And that, my esteemed colleagues, is why we should abduct a human child. Lead researcher Vextar concluded with an enthusiastic wave of his 3 upper appendages. His lab coat, designed to mimic human professional attire, hung awkwardly from his elongated torso. The fluorescent lights of the meeting chamber reflected off his pale blue skin, highlighting the look of absolute self-satisfaction on his face. The other 5 members of the Galactic Research Consortium Xenobiology Division stared back in stunned silence. Well, as silent as a room full of Zentari could be, their natural breathing sounded like someone repeatedly deflating whoopee cushions. "You can't be serious," Dr. Rella Dorn finally sputtered, her cranial ridges flushing a deep purple. "The consortium explicitly forbids interfering with pre-FTL civilizations. We could lose our funding, our credentials, not to mention it's ethically reprehensible." Vextar rolled all 4 of his eyes simultaneously. "Oh please, we've been observing humans for centuries. What good is all this data if we don't conduct proper developmental studies? Their species is advancing too rapidly, and we need to understand why. Besides," he added with a dismissive flick of his sensory tentacle, "it's not like they'll miss one. They produce approximately 300,000 new specimens daily." Chief Administrator Brill Zento leaned forward, his weight causing the anti-grav chair to whine in protest. "The Ethics Committee will never approve this, Vextar. Never." The Ethics Committee, Vextar laughed, a sound resembling a garbage disposal with something metal caught inside. "Those dusty old fossils haven't approved anything more exciting than watching paint dry since the Proxima incident. Look, we're talking about advancing our understanding of the most dangerous potential species in the galaxy. You've all seen the projections humans could achieve interstellar travel within the next 200 cycles. Don't we need to be prepared?" Junior researcher Cora Tam nervously adjusted her atmospheric filter. "But a child? Couldn't we just, I don't know, continue with tissue samples? Or abduct an adult? Adults are already formed, their neural pathways established, their behavioral patterns set," Vextar countered, projecting a holographic graph showing human developmental stages. "We need to observe the formation process. How does a species that evolved as prey animals on a death world become so adaptable, so innovative, so stubborn?" Security Officer Marn Desh, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. "If, and I stress if, we were to consider this insanity, how would you propose extracting the specimen without detection? Earth is under level 3 observation protocols." Vextar's mouth stretched into what he believed approximated a human smile, though it looked more like a grimace of gastrointestinal distress. "I'm so glad you asked. I've already drafted a complete extraction plan, including post-acquisition containment protocols and developmental milestones for study." He flicked a data chip onto the conference table, where it projected a detailed operational timeline. "We select an isolated human dwelling, use standard temporal distortion fields to freeze the local environment, extract the specimen, and deploy a bioreplicant that will malfunction after approximately 7 solar cycles, mimicking what humans call childhood illness and death. Their primitive medical technology won't detect anything unusual." The room fell silent again, this time with a different quality contemplation rather than shock. "This is madness," whispered Dr. Dorn. "Complete madness." "Perhaps," responded Administrator Zento, his voice unnervingly calm. "But Vextar raises valid points about preparedness. The consortium has classified humans as a potential class of threat species." "Exactly," Vextar exclaimed, sensory tentacles quivering with excitement. "And when has madness ever stopped scientific progress? Think of the publications, the prestige. We could be the leading experts on humanity when they eventually join the galactic community." Security Officer Desh frowned. "Or when they try to conquer it." "Either way," Vextar countered, "wouldn't it be better to understand them? Knowledge is power. After all, that's actually a human saying, believe it or not." The committee members exchanged uneasy glances, their collective resolve visibly weakening. "Fine," Administrator Zento finally declared, his voice heavy with resignation. "We'll conduct a vote. But Vextar, if this proceeds, it's entirely your responsibility. Your career, your reputation, everything rides on this." Vextar's expression shifted to one of solemn determination, though the effect was somewhat ruined by the excited wiggling of his sensory appendages. "I understand completely. And I promise you won't regret this historic decision." Oh, how spectacularly wrong he would be. The extraction team hovered silently above the Chen family home in rural Montana, their ship cloaked with technology that made it about as detectable as a politician's conscience. The modest two-story house sat isolated at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by towering pine trees and absolutely zero witnesses. Perfect. Temporal distortion field active in 321. Junior technician Plex mumbled through a mouthful of snack pellets, his pudgy gray finger pressing the glowing control panel. Field stable. We have approximately 14 minutes before system degradation. Vextar nodded approvingly. Excellent. Deploy the extraction drones. Two spherical devices descended from the ship's belly, cutting through the frozen time bubble surrounding the house. They phased through the building's structure like ghosts through particularly uninteresting walls. Target located, came the mechanical voice over the comm system. Dormant female human juvenile. Approximately 4.3 Earth years old. Biometric stable. Vextar practically bounced with excitement. Perfect specimen age. Old enough to have developed basic language and motor skills, young enough that neural pathways remain highly plastic. Extract immediately. The team watched through the drone's visual feed as it approached a small bed decorated with what appeared to be some form of primitive artistic renderings of Earth creatures. A miniature human lay sleeping, clutching a stuffed representation of a bear, ironic, considering bears had been predators of humans throughout much of their evolution. Specimen secured, the drone reported as a containment field enveloped the child, deploying bioreplicant. An exact duplicate of the human child materialized on the bed, programmed with a fatal but undetectable genetic flaw that would activate in 7 Earth months. Extraction complete. Returning to ship. 15 minutes later, the ship was breaking atmosphere, its precious cargo secured in the specially designed containment habitat. Vextar hovered over the observation window, watching the still sleeping human child. To begin initial documentation, he instructed the medical team. I want baseline measurements for everything: neural activity, hormone levels, bone density, immune response, everything. The child, Maya Chen, according to Earth records, woke during the 3rd hour of transit. Rather than the expected terror response, she simply stared wide-eyed at the strange beings moving around her habitat. Fascinating, Vextar murmured, furiously taking notes. Subject shows curiosity rather than fear as primary response. Pupil dilation suggests alertness, but heart rate remains within normal parameters. Then Maya did something unexpected. She smiled and waved. Hello. Are you space people? Like in my books, her voice came through the translation system with perfect clarity. The entire medical team froze. This wasn't in the behavioral prediction models. Yes, Vextar responded hesitantly. We are space people. Maya nodded sagely, as if this confirmed a long-held theory. I knew it. Daddy says there's no aliens, but I told him. Are we going to your planet? Will I get to see stars up close? Vextar exchanged baffled glances with his team. Fear, crying, shock, these were the expected responses. Not enthusiasm? Subject demonstrates unprecedented adaptability, he dictated into his recorder, and concerning levels of intelligence for developmental stage. Can I have breakfast? Maya asked, completely unperturbed by her abduction. I like pancakes. Do you have pancakes in space? Dr. Rella Dorn approached Vextar, speaking quietly. This is highly unusual behavior. Our psychological models predicted severe trauma responses, not whatever this is. I know, Vextar whispered back, watching as Maya cheerfully explored her containment habitat. It's even better than I hoped. Think of the data we'll collect. Or Dorn countered, consider what this level of adaptability means about humans as a species. If their young can so quickly normalize something this traumatic, then we've made the right decision studying them, Vextar finished firmly. Better to understand them now than when they're spreading throughout the galaxy. As Maya began systematically testing the boundaries of her habitat, pressing panels, examining the food dispenser, and attempting to communicate with every team member who passed by the research team, came to a unanimous decision. We'll raise her here, Vextar announced, in a controlled environment where we can document every developmental stage. This specimen could be the key to understanding humanity's potential and their dangers. He had no idea just how prophetic those words would prove to be. Subject has successfully adapted to modified atmosphere within 37 days, Vextar dictated, watching 7-year-old Maya through the observation window. Respiratory efficiency now at 93% of consortium standard. Remarkable. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor of her expanded habitat, now decorated with various educational materials, toys and artwork she'd created. She was currently dismantling a standard-issue consortium data pad, the third one this week. Should we stop her? Asked junior researcher Cora Tam, who had recently been assigned as Maya's primary caretaker. Those aren't exactly cheap. Vextar waved a dismissive tentacle. Let her explore. Document everything. The last datapad Maya had taken apart, she'd reassembled with modifications that somehow extended the battery life by 22%. Nobody, including Maya, could explain exactly how she'd done it. Subject continues to demonstrate accelerated learning patterns, Vextar continued. Has mastered consortium standard language, basic mathematical principles through what humans call algebra, and shows intuitive understanding of our technology that frankly exceeds many of our junior technicians. She asked about her parents again yesterday, Cora interjected softly. Vextar's typing paused. What did you tell her? The established narrative. That her home planet suffered an environmental catastrophe, and we rescued her as part of an interspecies preservation program. Vextar nodded approvingly. Good. Maintain consistency. The lies had started small. Necessity, Vextar told himself. They couldn't very well tell a child they'd kidnapped her for study. But as the years passed, the fabrications had grown more elaborate, constructing an entire fictional backstory that Maya had accepted with that same unnerving adaptability. Oh, for the love of Cora, exclaimed suddenly. She's reconfigured the environmental controls again. Indeed, the habitat's monitoring panel showed Maya had adjusted the temperature settings to create different climate zones within her living space. An impressive feat considering those controls were supposed to be locked. Subject shows persistent desire to manipulate environment to create variety, Vextar noted. Consistent with species evolution in highly variable planetary conditions, he found himself smiling a human expression he'd unconsciously adopted. Clever girl. Vex Maya's voice came through the communication system. I made something for you. Despite his attempts at maintaining scientific detachment, Vextar found himself hurrying to the habitat entrance. The decontamination process seemed particularly tedious today. Inside, Maya proudly held up what appeared to be a modified communication device. I fixed it so you can talk to me from anywhere in the station. And I added games too. Games, Vextar asked, accepting the device cautiously. Yeah. Look, Maya pressed a sequence of buttons, and a simplistic representation of Vextar appeared on the screen, navigating obstacles. It's you, running experiments and dodging the boring administrators. She giggled, a sound that, against all professional ethics, Vextar had grown fond of. This is quite impressive. Maya, he examined the device, noting she'd somehow reprogrammed its core functions without damaging its original purpose. Where did you learn to code like this? Maya shrugged, another human gesture the team had documented extensively. I watched technicians drill fixing the systems last month. It didn't look that hard. Vextar exchanged a glance with Cora, who had followed him into the habitat. Zrill was their senior programming specialist with over 40 years of experience. Later that evening, after Maya had fallen asleep, the research team gathered for their weekly assessment. The specimen continues to exceed all developmental benchmarks, Security Officer Desh observed, reviewing the data. Her problem-solving abilities are concerning. Concerning? They're revolutionary, Vextar countered. Her neural plasticity allows her to consistently circumvent our security measures, Desh interrupted. 3 times this month alone, she's accessed restricted areas of our database. Dr. Rella Dorn nodded in agreement. And have you noticed how the support staff interact with her? The nutritional team is preparing special meals based on her preferences. The maintenance workers rerouted their schedules to avoid disturbing her sleep cycle. Even you, Vextar. What about me? He challenged, defensive appendages rising slightly. You started calling her by name instead of subject or specimen, Dorn pointed out. You bring her gifts from your off-station travels. Yesterday I observed you explaining your childhood on Centauri Prime to her. Vex-Tar's skin flushed a deeper blue with embarrassment. Establishing rapport facilitates better research outcomes. You've become attached, Dorn stated flatly. We all have, to varying degrees. That wasn't supposed to happen. Vex-Tar couldn't argue. Somewhere between measuring Maya's cranial development and teaching her about stellar cartography, the clinical distance had evaporated. He found himself taking pride in her accomplishments, worrying about her well-being, looking forward to their daily interactions. Perhaps he conceded some attachment was inevitable when raising a social species. But I assure you, I remain committed to the scientific integrity of this project. Even as he said it, Vex-Tar knew he was lying to his colleagues and to himself. The truth was, somewhere in the last 3 years, he'd stopped seeing Maya as a research subject. And he had absolutely no idea what that would mean for their future. For the last time, Vex, I don't need supervision in the quantum simulation lab. Maya's voice echoed through the research wing, causing several technicians to wince. At 13 Earth years, her vocal capabilities had developed to include a particularly grating tone that the research team had classified as teenage indignation. Standard protocol requires senior oversight for all Level 3 equipment usage. Vex-Tar responded calmly, though his dorsal tentacles twitched with annoyance. Even for me. But you let technician Greel work unsupervised, and last week he accidentally created a micro-singularity in the break room. It sucked up 3 cups and Administrator Zento's favorite snack dispenser. Maya countered, arms crossed in the defensive posture the team had documented extensively during this developmental phase. Vex-Tar suppressed what humans called a chuckle. The incident had indeed been rather amusing, especially Zento's reaction. Greel has been operating quantum equipment for 22 years. You've been using it for 7 months. And I've already recalibrated the phase variance to improve efficiency by 32%, Maya reminded him, which Greel said was, and I quote, technically impossible. This was the challenging aspect of raising a human adolescent with an IQ that, by Earth standards, would classify somewhere between prodigy and slightly terrifying. Maya wasn't wrong. Her technical aptitude had long since surpassed many of the consortium's specialists. The problem was that her judgment remained very much that of a 13-year-old. Fine, Vex-Tar conceded. 2 hours unsupervised. The system will monitor your activities, and emergency protocol Zeta 9 remains in effect. Maya rolled her eyes dramatically. Another documented adolescent behavior. Whatever. Not like I'm going to blow up the station. She paused, then added with a mischievous grin, again. That was a controlled plasma discharge, not an explosion. Vex-Tar corrected automatically, and it only affected one section of the hydroponics bay. The plants grew back bigger. Maya called over her shoulder as she hurried toward the lab before Vex-Tar could change his mind. 2 hours and 17 minutes later, alarms blared throughout the research station. Unauthorized access to classified network detected. Security breach in quantum simulation lab 3. Vex-Tar nearly tripped over his own appendages rushing toward the lab. He found Maya staring wide-eyed at a holographic display, her face pale, hands trembling. Maya. What did you? His words died as he saw what was displayed on the screen. Project Genesis Human Developmental Study. Subject Maya Chen, female, 4.3 years at acquisition. Location of extraction Earth, North American continent. Status of bioreplicant terminated, according to protocol, after 7.2 months. Current project duration 9.1 years. Hundreds of video files were open. Footage of her abduction, early testing, biological sampling, everything. You lied to me, Maya whispered, her voice eerily calm. All of you. There was no environmental catastrophe, no rescue mission. Her eyes, glistening with moisture, turned to Vex-Tar. You stole me. The security team burst into the room, led by Officer Desh, weapons drawn. Step away from the console, specimen. Don't call her that. Vex-Tar snapped, moving protectively toward Maya. What am I? Maya demanded, ignoring the security team. A lab rat? An experiment? Was anything real? Do you even? Her voice broke. Did you ever actually care about me? Or was that part of the study too? The question hit Vex-Tar like a physical blow. Maya, it's complicated. The project began as research, yes, but... Answer me, she screamed. the force of her emotion causing even hardened security officer Desh to take a step back. "Yes," Vextar exclaimed, his professional facade crumbling completely. "Yes, I care about you. More than is scientifically appropriate. More than the consortium would approve. The project parameters changed years ago, at least for me." Maya's expression shifted through a kaleidoscope of emotions: betrayal, anger, confusion, and something else, something calculating. "Prove it," she said finally. "If I'm more than a specimen to you, prove it right now." "Lower your weapons," Vextar ordered the security team without hesitation. "Lead researcher, that violates," Desh began. "I said lower them." Vextar's voice resonated with an authority that surprised even himself. The security team hesitated, then slowly complied. "What happens now?" Maya asked, her brilliant mind visibly processing this paradigm shift. "Do you send me back to Earth? Keep me locked up forever? Terminate the inconvenient experiment?" Administrator Zento stepped into the lab, having arrived during the confrontation. "That depends," he said, his tone measured, "on what you want, Maya Chen." Maya's gaze darted between the various aliens, her captors and caretakers both. Then, remarkably, she laughed, a sound containing equal parts bitterness and genuine amusement. "What I want," she gestured to the screens displaying her entire life as a research project. "I want the truth, all of it. I want access to everything you know about humans, about Earth, about me. No more locked files, no more restricted for your safety nonsense." She stepped forward, confidence growing with each word. "And since you've invested 13 years in studying me, I think it's fair I get to study you too. I want to be part of the research team officially, not as a subject but as a colleague." Vextar and Zento exchanged stunned glances. "That's unprecedented," Zento stammered. "So is kidnapping a child and raising it in a space laboratory," Maya countered dryly. "We're well beyond precedent here." After a tense silence, Vextar spoke. "I'll sponsor her appointment personally. She's more than qualified." "This is absurd," Desh protested. "She's a security risk, a human who spent her entire conscious life among us," Vextar interrupted. "Who understands our technology, our culture, our weaknesses. Would you prefer she be our colleague or our enemy, Officer Desh?" The question hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone. "Very well," Zento finally declared. "Maya Chen, welcome to the Galactic Research Consortium. Your first assignment is to help us understand you." Maya's smile contained something that made Vextar's skin prickle with an unfamiliar sensation. Was it pride? Or was it fear? "And that, esteemed members of the consortium, is how my quantum entanglement communication system eliminates the 30-second delay currently limiting our deep space operations," Maya concluded, deactivating the holographic display with a casual flick of her wrist. The presentation chamber fell silent. 27 of the consortium's most brilliant minds stared at the 17-year-old human standing confidently before them. She wore the official silver-gray uniform of a junior researcher, modified to accommodate human physiology, with one unauthorized addition: a small blue and green pin representing Earth. "This is Chief Science Director Vornthal," struggled to find appropriate words, all 6 of his speech organs seemingly failing simultaneously. "This is Revolutionary Researcher Chen. Utterly revolutionary." Maya smiled politely, though the expression didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you, Director. I've prepared prototype schematics for immediate implementation." Vextar watched from the back of the chamber, his chest cavities swelling with complicated emotions. Pride in Maya's accomplishments battled with unease at how quickly she'd advanced. In the 4 years since her appointment to the research team, she'd produced 17 major technological innovations, each more impressive than the last. The consortium had transitioned from studying her to depending on her brilliance. "The military council will want this technology immediately," Administrator Zento noted, ever practical. "The strategic advantages alone are precisely why I've encoded certain ethical limitations into the base system," Maya interrupted smoothly. "The entanglement network cannot be used to remotely trigger weapons systems or override planetary defense grids." A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. "That's not your decision to make," researcher growled Security Commander Traz, who had replaced Desh after the latter's unexpected retirement. "Consortium technology belongs to the consortium." Maya's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Actually, Commander, according to Intellectual Property Statute 339B, which I took the liberty of reviewing thoroughly, primary creators maintain ethical oversight of potentially dangerous innovations. I'm simply exercising my legal rights. Commander Traz's facial ridges darkened with frustration. This is why allowing non-consortium species access to. Perhaps Vextar interjected quickly, moving forward. We should focus on the remarkable achievement before us rather than hypothetical applications. This technology will transform our scientific capabilities across all divisions. The tension in the room eased slightly, though Traz continued glaring at Maya with undisguised suspicion. Later, as Maya and Vextar walked through the Arboretum level, her favorite place on the station, she finally relaxed her professional demeanor. "They're afraid of me," she observed, bending to examine an exotic flowering plant. Not just Traz, all of them. Vextar couldn't deny it. "You've accomplished more in 4 years than most researchers do in a lifetime. It's unsettling to them." "Because I'm human," Maya stated flatly. "Partially," Vextar admitted. "But also because you understand our system so intuitively, yet think so differently. You see connections and possibilities we miss. It's both impressive and concerning." Maya straightened, fixing him with that penetrating gaze that had become more disconcerting as she matured. "Have you read the political situation reports I requested? About the consortium's expansion policies?" Vextar's tendrils twitched nervously. "Maya, those reports are highly classified. How did you? Did you know there are 17 separate subjugated species currently classified as protectorates of the consortium?" she continued, ignoring his question. "Or that the consortium maintains what they euphemistically call specimen conservation facilities on 12 different worlds?" A cold sensation spread through Vextar's circulation system. "These are complex political matters that long predate your arrival. The consortium's methods may sometimes seem harsh, but they have humans," Maya interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Not just tissue samples or ancient remains. Living humans, hundreds of them." Vextar froze, his respiratory functions temporarily suspending. "That's impossible. The Directorate would never authorize." Facility 9, Outer Rim Sector 12-7, Maya recited from memory. Officially designated as a temporal anomaly research station, 273 human subjects, acquired over the past 60 years through various means. Some abducted like me, others rescued from failing spacecraft, a few purchased from less ethical spacefaring species. The implications were staggering. "How did you discover this?" Maya's expression was unreadable. "I've been systematically mapping the consortium's secure networks for years. Did you really think those security protocols could keep me out forever?" Before Vextar could respond, Maya's communication device chimed. She checked it, then smiled a cold, calculated expression that sent chills through Vextar's neural pathways. "The Directorate approved my request to tour our deep space research facilities," she announced, "including Facility 9. Maya, Vextar said carefully, suddenly aware he might be speaking to someone far more dangerous than he'd realized. "What exactly are you planning?" She placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of affection they'd developed over years, but now carrying a weight of something else, something strategic. "Planning? I'm simply pursuing scientific knowledge. As you taught me," her smile softened, becoming the expression he recognized from the child he'd raised. "Don't worry, Vex. Everything I do is for the advancement of understanding between species." As she walked away, Vextar couldn't help but notice how the station personnel moved aside for her, not with the deference shown to senior researchers, but with something closer to the wary respect given to approaching storms. "So that's the famous Maya Chen," murmured Dr. Eliza Novak, her eyes never leaving the slim figure speaking with Facility Director Krez. "I thought they'd be bringing some kind of super soldier, not a teenager." "Don't let appearances fool you," Thomas Harper whispered back. At 43, he was the longest surviving human captive at Facility 9. Word is she redesigned the consortium's entire power grid from scratch. She's got half their upper echelon wrapped around her finger. "And the other half wants her dissected," Eliza added. "Question is, which half is stronger?" The gathered humans, 17 of them permitted into the common area for this special visitation, watched as Maya concluded her official tour. Her consortium escorts maintained a respectful distance, though their attention never wavered. 5 cameras, 2 hidden sonic disruptors, And at least 3 armed guards, Maya said casually as she approached the human group, her voice pitched precisely to carry to human ears while remaining inaudible to Zentari hearing ranges. Plus whatever they've got in the ceiling panels. Smile and act impressed, like I'm telling you about life on the station. The humans responded with convincing expressions of wonder and excitement. I'll make this quick, Maya continued, maintaining a pleasant expression. I know what they're doing here. I know about the experiments, the breeding program, the neural mapping, and I'm going to end it. How? Thomas asked through a fixed smile. There's 12 security checkpoints between us and the nearest shuttle bay. Maya's eyes sparkled with something dangerous. You let me worry about that. 3 months from now, when the Arcturus research vessel docks for its annual supply transfer, be ready. You'll know when it's time. Ready for what exactly? Eliza demanded quietly. Maya leaned in, as if sharing a delightful anecdote. Ready to take back your freedom, Dr. Novak. Ready to make the consortium regret ever setting foot on Earth. Before anyone could respond, Maya stepped back, announcing loudly, I'm so pleased to meet fellow humans. Your adaptation to consortium environments is fascinating. I'd love to discuss your experiences further during my stay. In his private quarters that evening, Vextar paced nervously, all 4 limbs and both sensory tentacles in constant agitated motion. You need to tell me what you're planning, Maya, he demanded when she finally returned from her cultural exchange dinner with the facility's human population. Maya dropped casually into a chair, helping herself to a container of synthesized fruit. Planning? I'm conducting the approved cultural assessment. The directorate specifically requested. Stop it, Vextar interrupted, his voice uncharacteristically harsh. I've known you since you were 4 years old. You think I can't tell when you're manipulating a situation? Maya's casual demeanor vanished, replaced by something harder, more focused. Fine. You want honesty? I'm documenting abuses, collecting evidence, building relationships, exactly what any good researcher would do. For what purpose? Vextar pressed. Justice, Maya replied simply. Or did you think I'd just accept that kidnapping sentient beings for experimentation is morally acceptable as long as it's sanctioned by the almighty consortium? Vextar's appendages drooped. You don't understand the complexities. I understand perfectly, Maya cut him off. The consortium believes its technological superiority gives it the right to treat other species as resources rather than equals. It's the same justification used by every empire in history, including those on Earth. The consortium isn't an empire, Vextar protested weakly. Maya's laugh was bitter. Tell that to the 17 subjugated worlds whose representatives aren't allowed seats on the directorate. Tell that to the humans in cages downstairs. Silence stretched between them, mentor and student, captor and captive, father figure and daughter of a different species. What happens? Vextar finally asked, his voice barely audible, when the directorate discovers whatever you're planning. Maya's expression softened. You could help me, you know. You've seen the ethical violations. You know this is wrong. I have a duty to. To what? To whom? Maya challenged. To the institution that commissioned the kidnapping of a child, or to the principles of justice and compassion you taught me? Vextar had no answer. 3 months passed in a blur of inspections, interviews, and carefully orchestrated cultural exchange events. If the facility staff noticed how often Maya's visits with the human population coincided with minor system glitches or security diagnostic tests, they never connected the patterns. On the final day of her inspection tour, as the Arcturus research vessel completed its docking procedures, Security Chief Marvak approached Maya in the observation lounge. Researcher Chen, the director requests your presence for the departure ceremony. The Arcturus captain has expressed particular interest in meeting you. Of course, Maya replied smoothly. I wouldn't miss it. 6 hours later, alarms blared throughout Facility 9 as the Arcturus broke from its docking clamps without authorization, its engines flaring to life. What's happening? Director Krez demanded, bursting onto the command deck. Where's the Arcturus crew? And where is researcher Chen? The communications officer looked up, face pale with shock. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Arcturus. It's Maya Chen. She says he swallowed hard. She says she's claimed the vessel by right of liberation, and that any attempt to pursue will be met with the full technological capability she's equipped it with. On the main view screen, Maya Chen appeared, seated in the captain's chair. Behind her stood the entire human population of Facility 9, and what appeared to be the original Arcturus crew secured in containment fields. "This is Maya Chen, formerly of the Galactic Research Consortium," she announced, her voice cold and clear. "Consider this the first act of human independence. We thank you for your involuntary contribution to our cause." The transmission cut off as the Arcturus jumped to FTL, vanishing from monitoring systems. In his quarters, Vextar stared at a small communication device Maya had given him weeks earlier. It contained a single message. "I'm sorry it came to this. You have 3 days to decide where your true loyalties lie. Coordinates enclosed." "They're mobilizing the 7th Fleet," reported Thomas Harper, now serving as Maya's security chief aboard the renamed vessel Freedom. 6 heavy cruisers, a dozen support ships. Maya nodded, unsurprised. She stood before a massive holographic display showing real-time movements of consortium forces across 3 sectors. Exactly as predicted. The consortium always follows strategic doctrine to the letter. It's both their greatest strength and their most exploitable weakness. Eliza Novak, who'd proven herself a brilliant tactical analyst, frowned at the display. "Even with the modifications to our shields and weapon systems, we can't outfight a fleet that size." Who said anything about fighting? Maya's lips curved into that dangerous smile her crew had come to recognize. "We're not going to engage them at all." "Then what's the plan?" asked Clarvoth, a reptilian Draken whose species had been studied by the consortium for generations. Like many representatives of subjugated species, he'd joined Maya's growing movement after their liberation of research facilities across 3 sectors. Maya expanded the holographic display, highlighting seemingly random points across consortium space. "We're going to make the consortium defeat itself." Over the next 12 hours, as the consortium fleet closed in on their supposed location, Maya's network executed what she called Operation Chaos Theory, a concept utterly foreign to the logical, orderly minds of the consortium leadership. On 17 different worlds, mysterious malfunctions struck consortium infrastructure simultaneously. Power grids fluctuated. Communication networks broadcast bizarre, encrypted messages that seemed to contain hidden meanings. Supply shipments were rerouted to incorrect destinations. And most devastating of all, classified research data began appearing on public networks, revealing the consortium's most unethical programs to its own citizens. None of it was random. Every disruption had been calculated to create maximum psychological impact with minimal actual damage, a concept Maya called fear multiplication. "I don't understand," complained Directorate Security Commander Traz during an emergency session. "These attacks cause negligible physical damage. It's almost as if they're deliberately avoiding casualties." "Because they're not trying to destroy us," Vextar realized, speaking for the first time since being called to consult. "They're trying to communicate." "Communicate what?" demanded Supreme Director Zoll. "That they're terrorists? Saboteurs? That they could do much worse if they wanted to," Vextar explained, suddenly seeing the brilliant strategy with painful clarity. "Maya is demonstrating restraint, not weakness. She's showing your own citizens that the dangerous humans are more ethical than their government." The Directorate chamber erupted in outrage, but Vextar noticed something telling. Several representatives were nodding thoughtfully, particularly those from worlds more recently brought into the consortium. Meanwhile, across consortium space, Maya's carefully orchestrated campaign continued. Liberation forces struck 3 more research facilities, freeing not just humans but members of 12 different species subjected to consortium study. Unlike the consortium, which compartmentalized information rigidly, Maya ensured every liberated being knew exactly who had saved them and why. Most brilliantly, she leveraged a trait the consortium had never fully appreciated in humans: the ability to create compelling narratives. Every freed population became not just allies but evangelists, spreading stories of consortium atrocities and human-led liberation. Maya understood what the consortium didn't: that hearts and minds could be more powerful than fleets and weapons. Representatives from the Crodian Alliance are requesting a meeting, reported Communications Officer Samir Patel, another liberated human. They're offering asylum and potential military support. Maya nodded thoughtfully. The Crodians, a loose federation of worlds on the consortium's borders, had long maintained an uneasy neutrality. Their support would change everything. The consortium just deployed quantum disruptors in the Vega sector, Eliza interrupted urgently. They're trying to collapse our communication network. Let them try, Maya replied confidently. They still don't understand what they're fighting. Our strength isn't in our technology, it's in our adaptability. This was the fundamental advantage the consortium had never grasped, despite years studying humans. Where consortium species evolved in stable environments that rewarded consistency and predictability, humans came from a chaotic death world that demanded creative problem-solving and rapid adaptation. Maya had designed their resistance to be fundamentally human, decentralized, improvisational, and psychologically sophisticated. As Maya reviewed the latest intelligence reports in her private quarters, her communication device signaled an incoming transmission on a frequency she'd almost given up monitoring. Her heart raced as she activated the secure channel. Vextar's familiar face appeared, looking haggard but determined. "You were right," he said without preamble. "I've seen the evidence. The breeding programs, the neural harvesting, the memory suppressions. He struggled for words. It's monstrous." Maya's expression remained carefully neutral. And I've made my decision," Vextar answered. "I'm bringing you something that will change everything." "What?" "The complete schematics of the Consortium's Central Command defenses," Vextar replied, his voice dropping to a whisper, "and the access codes to their primary research database." Maya's careful composure cracked, just slightly. "Why now, Vex?" His answer was simple but profound. "Because you taught me to see beyond the boundaries of my own understanding. Isn't that what science is supposed to be about? Remind me again why we're flying directly into the most heavily defended location in Consortium space." Eliza asked, strapping herself into the command chair beside Maya. Through the viewports of their flagship, the imposing silhouette of Consortium Central Command grew larger, a massive space station shaped like an elongated hexagon, bristling with defensive arrays. "Because," Maya replied, calmly adjusting her combat suit, "they're expecting us to be smart, to use guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, psychological warfare. So instead, we're going to be crazy. Gloriously, unpredictably, human-level crazy." Behind them, a fleet of 37 ships, a motley collection of liberated research vessels, Crodian support craft, and ships provided by other formerly subjugated species, moved into attack formation. "Consortium Defense Grid activated," reported Thomas from the tactical station. "They've launched interceptors. Approximately 200 ships moving to engage." Maya's expression remained serene, almost amused. "Right on schedule. Activate Phase 1. Throughout their small fleet, specially modified transmitters activated simultaneously, broadcasting what appeared to be encrypted Consortium command codes. Within moments, confusion spread through the defending fleet as their systems registered the approaching vessels as friendly forces. "Identification spoofers functioning perfectly," Thomas confirmed. "We're showing as the 7th Fleet returning from patrol. Their outer defense ring is standing down." "They'll figure it out in approximately 43 seconds," Maya noted, watching the countdown on her display. "Phase 2 now." From 12 different points around the Consortium command station, miniature drones previously deployed by undercover operatives activated simultaneously. They began broadcasting contradictory emergency signals, triggering automated lockdown protocols in different sections of the station. "Chaos cascade initiated," Eliza confirmed, watching the station's exterior lights flicker chaotically. "Their command structure is fragmenting exactly as predicted." Maya allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. The Consortium's rigid, hierarchical communication systems, designed to maintain perfect order, were becoming their undoing. When confronted with multiple contradictory emergency protocols, the system was programmed to isolate sections rather than risk total compromise. "They're catching on," Thomas warned. "Interceptors changing course. Weapons powering up. Full advance," Maya ordered calmly. "All ships, execute pre-assigned targets only. Minimal casualties, maximal disruption." The battle that followed would later be described in Consortium historical archives as the incomprehensible assault. Rather than targeting obvious military objectives, Maya's forces struck seemingly random systems, communication relays, environmental controls, cargo transfer mechanisms, even the station's agricultural sections. From the Consortium's perspective, it appeared completely irrational. From Maya's perspective, it was perfectly logical. She wasn't trying to destroy the station. but to create precisely the conditions needed for her true objective. Docking Bay 17 security compromised, Eliza reported as their ship slipped through the chaos. Infiltration team ready. Maya rose from her command chair. You have command, Eliza. Remember, if we're not back in 90 minutes, execute contingency Omega. Maya, Eliza said hesitantly, are you sure about this? Going in personally is an unnecessary risk. Maya checked her sidearm, a modified neural disruptor tuned to Zentari physiology. Some conversations need to happen face to face. 20 minutes later, Maya and a small strike team, including Vextar, moved swiftly through the chaos-filled corridors of Central Command. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as confused station personnel ran in all directions, responding to contradictory alarms. The Directorate chambers are 2 levels up, Vextar informed them, leading the way through service tunnels he'd memorized from the schematics. Supreme Director Zoll will be in the secure bunker beneath them. Unless human unpredictability scared him somewhere else, Maya replied with a grim smile. They encountered sporadic resistance, mostly security personnel confused about who exactly they were fighting. Maya's team used non-lethal tactics where possible, an approach that seemed to confuse their opponents even more. Security lockdown at the main entrance, reported Clarvoth as they approached the ornate doors leading to the Directorate chambers. Bypassing could take time we don't have. No need, Maya replied, approaching the security panel. She placed her palm against it and spoke clearly. Authorization Chen, Maya. Project Genesis override. Protocol Epsilon 9 Alpha. The doors slid open silently. You maintained your access credentials, Vextar asked, astonished. No, Maya replied, moving forward cautiously. I just knew they'd never bother to remove them. The consortium never truly believed a specimen could become a threat. The Directorate chambers were eerily empty, emergency protocols having evacuated most personnel. But as they approached the raised dais where the Supreme Director normally presided, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Security Commander Traz, Maya acknowledged coolly, still following orders without questioning them. Traz's ceremonial armor gleamed in the emergency lighting, his weapon trained unwaveringly on Maya. Still believing you're smarter than everyone else, human. Not everyone, Maya replied. Just those who think superiority comes from species rather than character. Behind Traz, the hidden entrance to the secure bunker slid open, revealing Supreme Director Zoll flanked by elite guards. Specimen Chen, Zoll's voice echoed through the chamber. How disappointing to see what became of our most promising research subject. Citizen Chen, Maya corrected. Of Earth. Here to negotiate the terms of the consortium's surrender. Laughter harsh and dismissive erupted from the Supreme Director. Surrender? To a band of escaped specimens and malcontents. Your delusions have progressed further than our psychological models predicted. Not delusions, Maya replied calmly. Mathematics. At this moment, 37% of consortium worlds are in open rebellion. 62% of your fleet is deployed chasing phantom threats we've created. And approximately 22 seconds ago, your central database began transmitting complete records of your atrocities to every connected system in consortium space. The Supreme Director's expression shifted from amusement to alarm. Impossible. The central database is isolated from external networks. Yes, Vextar interjected, stepping forward. But not from authorized Directorate access terminals. Like this one, he gestured to a console where he had quietly inserted a data crystal while Maya kept them distracted. Traz fired without hesitation, his weapon discharging a concentrated energy burst directly at Vextar. Maya screamed as her mentor, her surrogate father, crumpled to the floor, a smoking wound in his chest. What happened next would be described differently by every witness. Some claimed Maya moved faster than physically possible. Others insisted she somehow predicted Traz's next actions. Whatever the truth, within seconds, both Traz and the elite guards lay unconscious, and Maya stood before Supreme Director Zoll, neural disruptor pressed against his primary brainstem. Order a stand down, Maya commanded, her voice deadly calm despite the tears streaming down her face. Now. The Supreme Director stared into her eyes, searching for weakness and finding none. You would kill me in cold blood? Prove that humans truly are the savages we always believed. No, Maya replied, her finger steady on the trigger. I'm going to show you exactly how humans differ from the consortium. We understand mercy even when it's undeserved." She lowered her weapon slightly. "But first, you're going to watch Vextar's final gift to the galaxy." On every screen in the chamber, the consortium's most classified files began playing decades of abuses, unethical experiments, and the subjugation of dozens of species, all meticulously documented by the consortium's own obsessive record-keeping. As the Supreme Director watched his empire's foundations crumble in real time, Maya knelt beside Vextar, cradling his head gently. "Did it work?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes," Maya whispered, tears falling freely now. "You did it, Vex. You changed everything." His mouth curved in a surprisingly human smile. "No, Maya, you did. I just finally chose the right side." As Vextar's eyes closed for the final time, Maya felt something break and reform inside her, grief transforming into unshakable resolve. She rose slowly, facing the Supreme Director with clear-eyed purpose. "Now, about those surrender terms. All rise for Chairperson Maya Chen," announced the protocol officer, a Dracan, whose ancestors had been among the first species subjugated by the consortium. The newly formed Galactic Coalition Council chamber fell silent as Maya entered. At 22 Earth years old, she carried herself with the gravity of someone far older, the weight of recent events visible in her eyes. Her formal attire combined elements from various member species' traditional garments, with one personal addition, a small medal depicting Earth, created from metal salvaged from Vextar's laboratory equipment. "Please be seated," Maya said, taking her place at the circular table where representatives from 27 formerly consortium worlds now gathered as equals. "We have much to accomplish today." The agenda was ambitious, finalizing the coalition charter, establishing interspecies trade protocols, and most significantly, approving the new ethical research accords that would forever ban the practices that had defined the old consortium. "The final draft incorporates input from all member worlds," Maya explained, as holographic copies appeared before each representative. "Its core principle is simple: the value of knowledge never outweighs the dignity of sentient beings." As the council proceeded through their agenda, Maya found her thoughts drifting momentarily to the journey that had brought her here. From frightened child to laboratory subject, from reluctant researcher to revolutionary leader, each transformation shaped by both trauma and triumph. The greatest irony wasn't lost on her. The consortium had created their own downfall by taking a human child. They'd given her access to their knowledge, technology, and systems, never understanding that the human capacity for adaptation was matched only by their intolerance for injustice. Chairperson Chen, the Crodian representative's voice pulled her from her reflections. "The Council has unanimously approved the ethical research accords. Will you do us the honor of being the first signatory?" Maya rose, accepting the ceremonial stylus. As she signed the document that would reshape scientific practices across known space, she thought of Vextar, how he had begun as her captor but died as her ally. How even among the consortium, individual conscience could triumph over collective callousness. "The final item on today's agenda," Maya announced, returning to her seat, "concerns Earth." The chamber stirred with anticipation. Earth, the mysterious homeworld of the humans who had catalyzed such dramatic change, remained isolated, unaware of the galactic community. "The First Contact Committee has submitted their recommended approach," Maya continued. "After careful consideration, I believe we're ready to proceed. In 30 days, a coalition delegation will make official contact with Earth's governing bodies." "And will you lead this delegation?" Chairperson asked the Zentari representative, one of the few from Vextar's species who had supported the rebellion. Maya smiled, a genuine expression rarely seen during official proceedings. "Yes, it's time I went home, even if briefly. There are some stars best viewed from Earth's surface." Later, alone in her quarters, Maya stood before the viewport, gazing toward a distant point of light, a yellow star around which orbited the world she barely remembered. She touched the small medal at her collar, thinking of all she had endured, all she had learned, all she had changed. "We did it. Vex," she whispered to the stars. "We made something better." In the reflected glass, for just a moment, she saw not the leader of a galactic coalition, but the small child who had once waved cheerfully at strange beings and asked if they had pancakes in space. They had taken a human child for study. They had accidentally raised a conqueror. And in doing so, they had inadvertently created a better galaxy for all.